What's up, everybody? You're on Money Moves, and I'm Michael Munsterman. In the first ever two-man podcast, my guest today is Doc Bates. How are you, Doc?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So Doc and I are just going to be chatting about a bunch of different things. The truth is we have absolutely no idea where this is going to go, so it should be fun.
Grind, that's all I know. Find the time to quit, oh no. No matter good or bad, still I go. I never crack under pressure, I can't be broke. Sun up to the sun down. Map it out, now run it down. Mayweather, I never lose. I be making these money moves. Sun up to the sun down. Map it out, now run it down. Mayweather, I never lose. I be making these money moves.
None. Yeah. So, but that's interesting because one of the jumping off points, one of the things that I found most fascinating about you when we first met was that the entertainment industry and singing and being successful in the game of music is an old hat for you.
It's something that I did for many years and had a lot of fun doing it. And I always tell people I'm a certified has-been because anyone in the music industry, I say anyone, but I would say 95% of people that get in the industry, you as an artist, you pretty much have to figure out what you're going to do next because there is going to be a next. The average artist's career is about 5 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, look around. Go back 5 years and see who was on the top of the charts 5 years ago and where are they now?
So what do you define an artist? Is that somebody who has the ability to sing and finds a stage, or is that somebody who actually makes a living performing for others?
I'm just talking about a recording artist, like your Tim McGraws and your,
Doc Bates.
Doc Bates, people that write songs or perform songs and record songs. If you record songs, you're a recording artist. Phil's a recording artist.
For sure. Yeah, no, Phil's really talented. So if you guys, I think I've told you this before, in the beginning of Money Moves, the song that the grind, it's all I know, that's 100% Phil.
Yeah.
Phil did all of it, wrote it.
Yeah.
I called him and I'm like, hey, I need something punchy. Here are some examples of what I like. This is the theme of what we're doing. It's called Money Moves. You know me, you know what I'm about, you know where my heart is, just bring me something. And he brought me that and I was like, dude, it's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah, I remember having this conversation with you talking about it.
Right.
And Phil delivered exactly. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about an artist, is someone who has the ability to record art.
Right.
Then you're an artist. But most of the people in the world, the consumers of entertainment, we have a very short attention span. And most television shows don't last more than 3-4 seasons. And then, the really good ones, maximum 7-8 seasons.
Right.
And then very few.
Like the unicorns, the
Right,
Friends,
exactly.
the Seinfelds.
Right, those. The ones that go
like
10
a
to
decade.
15 years, and most of those are news shows, things like that.
So Phil and I, actually earlier we were talking about, and I'm trying to describe to people, we're hunting currently how to communicate with my core audience. That's this person that either owns a small business and they're struggling, they're trying to figure out how to grow and scale, or they are like a pre-entrepreneur, a futurepreneur. They're somebody that they hear that little calling inside of them, but they've never actually created anything yet.
Haven't answered that call.
Right, exactly. So we were talking about this and Phil was really challenging me well, how does that headline reach an entrepreneur? How does that headline reach an entrepreneur? And I said, well, here's my question to you. Because he was basically saying, the first section is called The Matrix, and it's all about, it's like this twisting and turning, winding road of trying to recalibrate people's minds.
Yeah.
The way you think about business, the way you think about money, the way you think about time, the way you think about resources, it's all skewed and it's wrong. And if you could delete these stories that you have in your head and just let me paint this new picture of a belief system for you, you could scale. And so Phil's really challenged me, well, I don't even know if this first section is for entrepreneurs. And I'm going to make this why I'm bringing this up right now.
Okay.
I said to Phil, I said, okay, well, take you as...
Because I'm currently experiencing this.
Right. Well, lots of people are.
Yeah.
And so the conversation, so you're a musician, right?
Right.
Right. And you travel and you're in front of people, right? Yeah. And I said, so I want you to take whatever you made last year, whatever that number is as a musician, whatever your total income was from, and Phil makes money, like he's put in front of some pretty big crowds. They pay him to go and speak and perform, and he creates music live on stage in front of people. It's super interesting.
Yeah. I got to come see your show. Wow, Phil.
So, in fact, Phil, if like right now you want to plug your own Instagram account here in the video,
Right.
you go ahead and do that. It's right here. The Only Eames. He's super talented. But I said, what if whatever amount of money you made last year, I said to you, that is not enough to qualify yourself as a musician. And what if I said you had to 10x that income before you could label yourself a musician in the marketplace? What would that do?
Well, it would set the bar so high that people, it would discourage a lot of the market. A big.
Right, but what's the thing that separates that person that makes, let's say, 75 grand a year as a musician? What's the thing that separates that person from the person that makes 750?
That's a very good question. And what's your answer?
So my, like, what I think that it is it's the mental perception of how much money 75 grand actually is. Like if you take an entrepreneur and you put him in the same thing and they think, wow, $75,000 a year is a lot of money, and I'm in front of a crowd and I can call myself an artist and here's what it is. But what if I told you that next year for you to label yourself as an artist, like I'm going to make you take it off all your social media platform, I'm going to make you take everything away, and I'm going to surround you with people who all they do is make 750. Like if you were the guy that made 750, you would be the lowest guy in the circle. It, like your mindset about success would change.
Right.
And your hustle would align with your mindset. That's my prediction.
That's your prediction.
Well, I mean, it's what I believe because I've seen that with entrepreneurs. I've seen that. So now you've played in the game of music.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get that the landscape for artists now, and maybe you should, let's back up. Why don't you tell me, like, because you've hit me with some highlight reel stuff. Why don't you do that for everybody who's listening or watching? Why don't you talk about like top 2 or 3 or 4, or even just your favorite moment that kind of showcases some pinnacle times for you? Because you were a big deal, and I don't want to just be.
Well, that's nice of you to say. It's kind.
Well, I mean, you've hung out with people that like I would get giddy and ask for their autograph. Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, as an artist. I had this same conversation with some other artists that, you know, a young rock group that I worked with here in the Kansas City area, and I sat down with one of those guys and they said, you know, we really want to get to that next level. And I said, do you have any idea what level you're at now? And they really didn't get it, you know. And what I'm trying to say is, when you're an artist, you work so hard to get that next rung of the ladder, and you just hustle and hustle and hustle and hustle and hustle. And then you look around at some point and you go, wow, I haven't quite made it. I've got, you know, if I could just get to this next level, then I can say I made it. And the thing is, you never really get. It's a ladder that never ends. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like an escalator.
You articulated this really well for me one time at breakfast. Doc and I get together often and we have coffee and we chat. And you talked about, if only I could open for this band. And then you went on this, like, you literally stair-stepped all the way up to icon status.
Yeah, and the reason that I went through this progression and talked about it in that way is because I've seen it so often in the music business. And so here I am. I'm this to answer your question before, I've been hustling, and I'm talking 200, 250 shows a year for 5-6 years. And I just feel like the low man on the totem pole. I mean, I always had that feeling like I'm the opening act. I'm not quite where I want to be in my career, or I haven't had the record sales that I want, or or there's just a million little qualifications that we put upon ourselves that we never quite achieve, And at some point I looked around and walked out on this stage, and my fiance was next to me. She's now my wife of 20 years, Dawn. And she was standing next to me, and I looked over to the left, and it said, "Do not touch." And there was a row of about a dozen guitars there. And it just occurred to me that I'm not allowed to touch any of Leonard Skinner's guitars. And I just proceeded to touch them all right then. Then I looked at Don and I said, "You're not allowed to touch them either." And at that point I went, okay, I can enjoy where I'm at, my level of success at this moment, because I'm about to step out on the stage opening for one of the biggest bands of all time. And I'm going to be in front of, okay, they hadn't all gotten there yet. The sun's still shining.
Right.
It's an outdoor event. But come on. I'm about to step on stage in front of 50,000 people, as far as the eye can see. And so that was one of those moments, like you said, a pinnacle moment in my career, where I went, okay, maybe I have sort of made it at this point. And there were other ones. There were many other points, but I think that was one of the coolest ones, where I finally went, wow.
So you said a couple things there, and what's interesting is I've got a lot of people that listen to the show, watch the show when we throw it up on YouTube, that are employees.
Yeah.
And some of them are business owners, some of them are artists, like a really eclectic group of people from the best I can tell.
Yeah.
And what you talked about there, I think that you at first said escalator.
Yeah.
But it's not an escalator at all. And in fact, I would liken everything you just described to business as an entrepreneur, because like instead of escalator, it's a lot more like a stair stepper, because you step and you step and you step, but the steps keep coming. You can't get up, you can't get ahead.
Then if you do get to the top of the steps,
just wait a second,
lost.
there's going to be a new step.
Yeah. But if you did ever get to the top, you would be lost.
What would you do?
What would you do with yourself?
100%.
So many people get to that point and they're depressed. And they go, "What am I doing? I'm in the depths. I'm more depressed than I've ever been in my life, and I got $50 million in the bank."
Right.
There are guys like that.
Well, because they were never so. And this was something that I experienced, and I'm curious to hear about your experience in this as well. And I think you're touching on it a little bit, but you talked about it there, and we talked about it before. You set these benchmarks of, if only I had this. Like there was a point where I thought, man, if I could just pay all my bills without worrying about having enough money to pay my bills.
Yeah.
And I got to that point and I thought, well, yeah, but if I could just have if I could just save $10,000. And then you save, it's like, yeah, but what's funny is you hit those parameters and then it's like, well, I got $10,000. That Breitling's been calling my name. But there's never a ceiling. And to what you're saying, I think that the message in that is enjoy the journey. Absolutely.
Because if you're not enjoying the journey, then you're wasting your time hitting benchmarks that aren't going to make you happy.
And this is so true. And I think it's the point that we can really just intertwine through all this conversation we're having, at least right now. And that is, there absolutely is not pleasure in a finish line. And what I mean by that is, I explain it like this. I celebrate my victories, but I never carry a victory over a sunset. I don't ever want to wake up the next morning and let that victory be like the thing that brings me happiness and peace, because it's so short-lived.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. I can't say that I've been that disciplined to have a victory and move on. I've reveled in my victories, maybe even been guilty of reveling in my victories a little too long.
Well, and so me too. I mean, I think that comes with it. It's just isn't the goal to set these guidelines for yourself and to strive towards them without beating yourself up if you hit it, if you don't, if you know?
Well, part of goal setting is hitting those benchmarks and those places, those goals, and I think that's important. There's a place in it. There's a place for it in everyone's lives. That's if they're going to be successful, but we have to remember that without enjoying the journey, then the goal is meaningless when you get there. Because when you get there, if you don't have somewhere to go next, then you're depressed.
Well, 100%. So when you set a goal for yourself, is it a goal, is it a line segment or is it a line? And what I mean by that is a line segment has a defined beginning and a defined end, but a line is never ending. It goes in both directions.
It's forever.
Forever. And so one of the things that I try to get people to do is not just when they're setting a goal isn't just, okay, so I'm going to set this one goal, this one little section. The conversation is, how does this section fit into your line, the line of your life? Even though our lives here on earth, they're a segment, but some people are just okay, my goal is I want to get $10,000 in the bank. And I was guilty of this. There wasn't a to what cause? What's the ultimate, how is this part of a bigger construct that I'm trying to obtain?
Yeah. What part of the picture is this?
Right. And so when you set goals, do you find yourself setting segment goals or is it towards a bigger, more elaborate plan of attack based on where you want to go?
Definitely the latter. I think there's an overarching thing that I want to do, and then I break it down into little pieces that are more manageable. Because a lot of the things that we do in life seem insurmountable.
100%.
For me, when I got out of the music business, and I won't go into it in great detail, but there was an injury and I was unable to perform, and I hit a brick wall in my career, in my life, and it was a very hard time for me, and I had to sit down and figure out huge life goals and change them, and figure out how I was going to proceed with my life, and it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. But I made the decision to go back to school and get an advanced degree and begin to pursue some things in the medical field, and it seemed like it couldn't be done. As a matter of fact, I went to the school that I wanted to go to, and I explained to them what I wanted to do and how fast I wanted to do it, and they laughed at me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You've never told me that before.
Oh, yeah. I said, well, I need to earn my bachelor's degree by this date, and then I need to earn my master's degree by this date. And those dates were a year apart.
Oh, wow.
And the guy I was talking to, the dean of the school, he literally looked at me and he laughed. And he said, and it wasn't like he was laughing at me. It was more like a condescending, you just don't understand what's involved here. You don't understand. It was like I didn't respect how much work that it was going to be.
Right.
And maybe I didn't. And in a way, maybe that was a good thing. I don't know. But all I knew was this guy telling me that I couldn't do it made me want to do it 1,000 times more. And you know what? I did it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I did exactly what I said I was going to do. There was a couple of moments where I thought this could go either way. And don't get me wrong, there were some dicey moments in there. And there was one particular moment where there was this one class that I needed. And they said, well, That's it. You're going to have to wait till next year. You're not going to graduate without this class. It's just not going to happen for you. And I said, well, we'll see about that. And I had to go to the dean of the psychology department with my hat in my hands and figure out how to do it. And I actually had them, they actually ended up substituting a course that they said that was required. They ended up substituting it for another course, which I was also told couldn't be done. But I found out that there actually is a way to do things. Most of the things that you can't be done, and most of the things that people tell you can't be done, can be done. They just haven't been done yet.
Right. No, that's good.
Well, I don't know.
But everything's, so one of the things that I really worked both of my daughters, like I drilled into their head, is you don't truly want something unless you ask 3 times.
I love it.
Yeah, because people are conditioned from the beginning to say, hey, look, no. Like, I've got this thing, and I really, like, I have this vision that I can accomplish, that I can, like, I know that I have the ability to do this thing. Get my master's in 1 year after getting my bachelor's. Like, that's pretty unheard of.
Yeah, it is.
Regardless of your degree.
Yeah.
And so, but you go in with that mentality, like, he's geared. And he's incentivized for that not to work.
Right.
I mean, they need tuition multiple years.
Well,
right? Like,
well, you still, it's not quite. You still have to pay for every hour that you take. But he was saying that people don't take that many hours. People don't take over 20 hours a semester in grad school. It's just not done. And then he said, well, how are you making a living? And I said, oh, well, don't worry about that. I have a business that I'm doing on the side. And, that pays for all my bills and everything. And he said, well, how many hours a week do you work at that? And I said, oh, about 50. And then he said, you're out of your mind.
I would have laughed also, probably.
Right. It's not going to work. But it did work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was 10 years ago. I've been practicing,
And so one of the things that you and I really hit on that I think created a good bond for us and kind of a foundation for a friendship was you are extremely entrepreneurial, and also Doc, I'm not just gonna sit here, and he's also just very, very intelligent, very articulate. He's an author, so I'd like to talk about your book a little bit, just because I think it's super fascinating.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Yeah, let's just jump into it. So Phil, you've already done your little logo right up here in between us, so why don't we throw up here a picture of Doc's book, and it's called You Are a Genius. It's really, I'm going to let you just kind of share your inspiration behind that. And
I didn't know you were going to, thrust this upon me in the middle of this.
So let me do this. Okay, so while you're kind of thinking, how do I even step into that? The other thing that I think has really been beneficial for me is as I've kind of navigated helping entrepreneurs and talking to people, you've got this internal fire to do your own thing, build the empire of Doc, rebuild with kind of a different, outside of the music industry, but more just from you're feeling that calling of entrepreneurship.
I want to make an impact on the world,
I love what you said, one of the first conversations we had, I'll never forget it. So what a lot of you guys might or might not know is that the reason you don't often hear the happy birthday song inside of a movie, like happy birthday to you, that little melody of happy birthday, is because it's copyrighted. And I don't know, what would you guess it costs somebody to put that in a movie? Or
I honestly don't know, and you might be hit up for, I don't know if he sang enough notes of but you might have to cut out a note so that he's not hit up. But anyway, but yes,
I'll just delete the episode.
A lady wrote that song, and she
in the 40s.
I believe so. I believe it was in a movie. Came out in a movie, I believe, initially. But I don't know all the details of that, so don't quote me on anything.
All right.
But my understanding is a lady wrote that song, and every time it's used in print or any synchronization is what we call it. Whenever like Phil's tune is synced to your podcast.
Right.
Well,
Which I own the rights to.
right.
Verbal agreement in the state of Missouri is completely binding.
That's right.
Phil, can I get a yes?
Okay, thank you, Phil. But
I was just
anyway,
kidding.
but someone owns the rights to Happy Birthday to You, that song. And every time, even after that lady is dead, which I believe she's still alive, but even after she dies, her heirs will still receive a fee every time it's used or synchronized with any kind of video.
For like 99 years or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for another 100 years, yeah.
That's incredible.
It's incredible.
And so what Doc said to me, and I loved it because it's everything that Money Moves is about, is that you said, I, in my lifetime, want to leave a legacy. I want to write my happy birthday song.
Yeah.
And that was just a beautiful statement. You're a sharp guy. You remember that conversation.
I do.
But for me, when
Now
you
that you
said
mention
that,
it,
when you said that, I was like, okay, you're the kind of people that I'll spend time with.
Oh, well.
Versus somebody that says, I'm going to have to win the lottery to be rich. If you say that around me, I'm probably not going to invest a lot of time in you.
Yeah.
I'll give you $1 to help you up your odds. Now go.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of a silly thing to say, I think.
So now, how does I want to write my happy birthday song? How does that kind of bridge over to You Are a Genius?
Well, okay, right. That statement, I want to write my happy birthday song. When I said that, it was more of a symbolic thing. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a song, although I am a songwriter, and I've written 1,000 songs, But
yeah, and I knew that, but I'm glad you
Right.
clarified that for everybody because I wasn't trying. Right, it's about
legacy.
leaving a mark.
Right. Doing something meaningful that furthers the human experience somehow. And I have several ideas, about how to do that, or, things that I want to do in the world that I believe will make a difference. But so I wanted to write a book about genius because I felt like every time I talk about genius, I brought it up, in front of. I've been fascinated with genius. I think everyone's a little bit fascinated with genius. And when we just give you an example. If I say name a genius, who would you name?
Michael Munsterman.
See there? See?
No, I'm just kidding. Okay, the worst kind of people are the kind that make a joke about themselves and then laugh at their own joke. Very narcissistic here on Money Moves right now.
Yeah.
No, so I think that probably my perception of the word genius is the answer that would serve your point would be Albert Einstein.
Yeah, people want to, you hear the Einsteins and you hear Mozart is someone that people want to
Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, people like that. And it's usually whenever you say, well, how do you know that person was a genius? For instance, let's talk about Thomas Edison.
Sure.
We've all heard the stories about Thomas Edison. What makes him a genius?
His work ethic, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yes.
But that's not something that most people say.
Right. Most people are going to say, well, he invented the light bulb.
Yeah, but people say stuff like,
they don't know that he failed 327 times before the 328
or whatever
created light.
Yeah, I think he said something to the effect of, before I ever invented the light bulb, I found 10,000 ways how not to invent it.
Right.
But people like to say, well, he never slept. He worked night and day.
He needed a light bulb.
Right.
His candle budget was through the roof.
Yeah, he was spending all his money to the gas company, I guess. I guess they had gas lights back then.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, usually people say, whenever you say genius, people say gifted. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing that used to always just grate on my nerves when people would say to me that, Doc, you're a genius. And I would say, well, thank you. And they'd say, yeah, you're really gifted. You know, like someone, like it was
You didn't
something,
earn it.
Right. Someone gave me the ability.
And there are prodigies, right? Like, but
In my opinion, there aren't.
I mean,
we can discuss
yeah,
that.
no, but there are certainly children who have a quicker uptake than others to an exponential rate. Like just earlier today, so I'm currently watching a ton of YouTube videos of like any subject matter because I want to see how I want to better understand YouTube's algorithm and the correlation between what kind of content they recommend for ads inside of what kind of videos and how that all ties together.
Yeah.
And so I find myself watching a lot of YouTube lately. And this morning I watched a video with a kid who couldn't have been 6, 7 years old. And he knew, like, they were showing him pictures of cars. He could tell you the car. He could tell you the asking price for the car's top speed, the overall weight of the car.
Yeah.
And sure, his parents could be at home flashcarding him cars,
Possibly.
but he genuinely seemed interested when you talked to him. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation about anything, but when you start talking about cars, boy, he just lit up. And there was just this pour out. Well, there has to be, in my opinion, the ability to uptake to some level.
Yeah, of course.
But then what do you do with that?
Well, that's interesting that you brought that up because there's a whole chapter in my book about prodigies, and I'm just going to name one, Mozart. Everyone considers Mozart this amazing prodigy, and he was. But I believe that people, by and large, misunderstand some things about prodigious children. You know, that we think that this kid's 7, 8 years old. There's no way I could play the piano and the violin and write a concerto at 8 years old or whatever. But the fact is, Mozart was probably playing the violin and keyboarding when he was 2, 3.
Sure.
There never was a day when he wasn't, you know. And the thing is, they say it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. And Mozart, if he started banging around on the keyboard at 2 years old, 3 years old, at whatever the point that the attention switch flipped in his head and he went, wow, I really enjoy doing this. And then all of a sudden you can't peel this kid away from an instrument, then you're talking about a kid that could probably spend 10, 12 hours or more a day. He didn't have a computer.
Right.
You know?
Sure.
So he could probably spend 10, 12. I mean, how many kids do you know that can play video games for 10 hours a day until they have carpal tunnel of both hands?
Oh, for
This
sure.
was Mozart playing the piano. And the interesting thing about Mozart is that his hands were deformed.
As an adult male or as...
His whole life.
Really?
They were terribly deformed. And we call it carpal bossing. I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little bumps on the back of my hand right there. That's where a lot of boxers get it from punching. You know, a lot of boxers and fighters, they do it intentionally. They'll punch like metal walls and things to build up calcium deposits on their
Seen
hands.
that. They get like enlarged knuckles.
Yeah.
And, right.
Yeah. I met a famous boxer one time and I shook his hand and I was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
This guy's hand must have weighed 50 pounds.
Oh,
you know?
that's funny.
Who was that guy? He was a world champion boxer. I can't remember his name.
Well, I get what you're saying in respect to there's an attention switch. There's something. And I guess my point to what I was saying earlier is, and maybe that's not a good example when we talk about a musician. For me, I can't remember a time in my entire life that I had enough rhythm to string together much of anything. Like I was a young kid and maybe I was 7 or 8, and there was another neighborhood kid whose family was very they were they played the guitar, they sang, they did lots of different things like that. And he brought a guitar over and he was strumming around and showing me. And just to even get a rhythmic pattern of anything, I didn't have it.
Oh,
like it
wasn't your thing.
The equivalent of maybe, and so for me, Phil would probably accuse me of being a little tone deaf as well.
Really?
Well,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You haven't heard
I would have
me.
to hear you sing.
You might. Like, we might do that before this is all. We're not going to do that. I don't want to lose my entire audience.
Okay.
But I get it. And I definitely get what you were saying in respect to someone turning all of their attention to that. There are kids right now making $100,000 a month playing video games because they're so...
That's ridiculous.
It's so...
But that's a completely other conversation.
Yeah.
But my point is, with Mozart, is that he probably did have 10,000 hours invested by the time he was 8 or 10 years old.
Right.
So he was a little kid playing professionally and had a father, and that was a professional entertainer. And that's all he knew. That's all he ever knew. And the really interesting thing about Mozart, and one of my favorite facts about Mozart was that he wrote a letter later on when he was an adult. It was probably near his death. It was later on in his career. Mm-hmm. He wrote a letter to a friend, and he expressed that, and I'm not quoting it. I don't remember the quote, but the spirit of the letter was, it was obviously probably written in Austrian or whatever, German or whatever language he spoke. But when he wrote the letter, the general expression was to his friend. He was like, "I'm so frustrated. People think that I was born knowing how to play these instruments, and no one truly understands the amount of work that I put into what I do." And when I read that, it just went, wow. The guy who people widely regard as the foremost genius of human history is Mozart. And even Mozart was frustrated. It pissed him off that people didn't realize how much he worked and how much effort that he put into making it look effortless.
Now, something that I don't want to be lost on everybody who's listening. When you're talking about, and I'm just doing some quick math.
Yeah.
When you're talking about 10,000 hours, so there are 52 weeks in a year. So if you want a weekend taken out of a year, you're taking out 104 days, which takes you down to somewhere around 250 days left in every single year. So if you've got 250 days yet left and you work at something 5 days a week, 10 hours a day, uninterrupted, you're a little less than 4 years away from being an expert in whatever craft it is that you think you want to do.
For being world class.
Now, how does that align with somebody getting rich quick? Like that should be easy.
Well, first of all...
No, I just love the correlation, right?
Well, people aren't willing to put in the time often. I don't think there's any such thing as getting rich quick.
Well, no, they're absolutely not. But this is something
even if you did, it would be empty. Who would care?
Well, if you succeeded, it would be one hit. It would be short-lived. It would be lots of things that are false about everything about that. But inside of your book, you talk about the habit of practice and like, can you talk just a little bit about that? Because you've started to do something, and I don't know how far into it you are, but writing a song a day.
Yeah.
So how far are you right now in that practice? And kind of what's your suggestion for like a good habit for somebody who says, there's this thing, I enjoy it, I believe I'm good at it, I might have a little bit of natural gifting in that direction, and this is where I'd like to pursue. How does like kind of tie that together for me, if you
Okay, I'll try.
I didn't give you enough of a, like, oh, here's a post, here's a post, here's a post. Make all that work. Go.
Okay, all right. Got it. No, that's a great question, actually, and I get that a lot. You mentioned that I had challenged myself to write a song a day, and I wrote. It was while I was writing my book, and at the time I was spending a minimum of 4 hours a day just writing my book, and at the same time I was writing a song a day, and I kept that up for roughly 150 days. And then some other things came up, and I got busy doing. And I went back to writing. Not quite, at that level. But while I was writing, when I was doing my song a day challenge, at first it was just to see if I could do it. And I'm primarily a lyricist, and I work with a lot of other songwriters in Nashville that are more melody and harmony guys.
So just to bring everybody up, a lyricist is somebody who their focus is more on just the words of the song,
primarily,
not driving that in sync with the music, like the notes.
And I do both, but
Right.
I'm primarily, I consider myself more of a lyricist than.
Sure.
But anyway, so I was writing a lyric a day, every single day for 150 days. At some point, the quality comes in, and someone said, this guy in Nashville I was talking to him, having this conversation, and he said, well, but what's the quality of everything that you're writing? And I said, well, the quality is within the quantity, because he was trying to argue that quality is more important than quantity, and yeah, that is.
Is it? Like I agree with the direction you were going.
Well,
way more than I agree with. Yeah, it is.
Well, it is and it isn't.
Right.
Because to me, I don't care how good you are, and I know guys that are millionaires. They've made tons and tons of money writing hit songs, and I could name names, but I won't. But some of these guys, you listen to their catalogs, and 90% of their songs are horrible. Like, I'm just like listening to their songs and going, like, crap, man, half of my songs are better than most of this guy's songs. Like, how did he ever get a hit record? And maybe some of them just aren't my cup of tea. But what I noticed is that to write 10 good songs, you need to write 100 songs. And 90 of them are going to be not quite as good, and then 10% of them are going to be awesome, And so people who write 10 songs a year are going to have one song that's pretty good.
Right.
People that write 100 songs a year are going to have 10 songs that are pretty good. And people that write 1,000 songs a year are going to have 100 songs that are pretty good. And also, the higher your productivity gets, as far as consistency and consistent quality, if your quality is consistent and your output is consistent, then eventually you're going to build a huge, not only a backlog of ideas, but a backlog of quality product, high quality product. And I believe that the guys that are sitting around waiting on some lightning bolt of inspiration to hit so they can write that one hit song.
Sure.
Those guys aren't going to write that many songs a year, but a lot of them, that's what they do. I've met these guys.
Well, and so in the world of weightlifting, they call that time under tension or time under load, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't build muscle unless you're under load lifting, if you're working, if you're putting in reps. It's not truly sometimes quantity over quality. Yeah. And in those circles, those people are freaking out right now because they're gonna say, no, it has to be quality also. And it does. You can't just half-ass it. You're exactly, yeah.
Yeah, in my opinion.
The quality follows the practice of the craft.
Right.
Well, the same thing's true for entrepreneurs. You have this brilliant idea, this idea that keeps you awake at night. You believe, so I did this once. We had a little round heater and we licensed it to the NFL. And we call it the helmet heater. Yep. It looked like a football helmet. It was licensed to the NFL. Yeah. And every single person we showed it to, they're like, this is going to be the greatest thing to hit sports memorabilia. Like, it's practical. It's going to go in everybody's man cave. It's under a couple $100. Like, people are going to be lining up in droves to buy this heater. And it was a total flop. The market didn't take it up. Like, we thought we had all these crazy ideas of what would work, what wouldn't work. And what brought us to the table was this very archaic built wooden, not very attractive, not really even the initial version, not really even that dependable, just being quite frank. It had a lot of mechanical and manufactured flaws, but there was something about the way it was marketed, the way it was sold, the way it looked, and it just all gelled together, and it went, for the terms everybody would use now, and if we were talking digitally, it would be, and it went viral.
Yeah.
But
it was amazing.
This constructed, polished, beautiful, perfect version of a product that we just knew was a flop. And that's the other thing that I think I would ask you is, how many of those guys who write 1,000 songs and 100 of them are pretty good songs, if you had them before the market judged their songs, if you had them highlight their top 100, would their top 100 align with the 100 that the market says is great?
I have no idea.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I've listened to people's songs before. Like, I listened to this one guy's song and I went, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, it was great. And it ended up being like a #1 hit for 15 weeks. Like a super hit.
I'd really like to know what the song was.
Well, it was a song called Amazed that I heard a demo of it.
Right.
And I went, oh, that's okay.
Is this like Amazed by You, like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the song.
I know the song for sure.
That's
I know the
funny.
song. Yeah.
Yeah, and I heard the demo and I was like,
it's all right.
Yeah, it was okay, But it was the right song, had to be with the right artist, the right voice.
And frankly, the right label, produced and distributed in the right fashion. Because you can have a really great song that if it's poorly produced, poorly sung, poorly distributed, poorly marketed, like any break in the supply chain stops a really great potential from reaching the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially how it used to be.
Sure. Well, the playing field is a bit more leveled now with the internet, but still, like at that level that you hear the songs on the radio and stuff like that, those songs that are charted hits are few and far between. And you've got, 20,000 plus songwriters out there that are vying for those spots. And
20,000 songwriters.
At least. I mean,
wow.
I'm just throwing that number out there.
I love, we could rabbit holes down so many different directions in this,
know.
but it's good. Well, look, so I just kind of as the last thing that I want you to really just kind of put a cherry on top of is the book. Like, who would the book benefit, and what's the overall premise of the book? And I know that we didn't talk about this. I came into this knowing that the one thing that I definitely wanted to make sure was that anybody who listens that would have any interest in picking up your book, because it truly is a great message that I think will benefit anybody inside of any genre. But I want from you, who's the perfect person for this?
Thank you for asking. I really appreciate that. And because I believe that too, obviously. The name of the book is You Are a Genius. And my problem with genius that I tried to, to touch on a moment ago is that people think that they don't have it. And the fact is, most of us do have it. And so what my book does is it's designed to break down the mythology behind genius and show the average person that, yes, you can be a genius too. What we have to do is find what you're passionate about, which you've talked about a lot. Find what you love, what you're passionate about, what yanks your chain, floats your boat, blows your hair back, whatever you want to call it, and focusing on that thing until you're the very best at it that you can possibly be. And that's where genius is. It comes with the work, not just with, it's not something someone hands you. It's not a gift. It's something that you work at and develop. And so in that case, anyone can be a genius. So this book is for anyone, any person who needs to understand the potential that they have within themselves.
And how to access it.
And how to access it, absolutely.
For sure. So where do they go to get the book?
The book is on Amazon. It was a #1 bestseller for 2 weeks on Amazon. I'm really proud of that. And in 5 categories, hit #1. It's still available as, there's a print version available, and there's also a digital version available that you can download. And if you get the print version, then you get a free copy of the download as well.
Cool.
And down the pipe, there's going to be an audio version.
As there should be. Now, so many people just like only do audiobooks
right.
these days, right?
Yeah, I'm one of them.
So cool. Like, and the takeaway, I guess, just to cap everything for today, like, Doc's exactly right. Every single person internally has some sort of a genius. And this is where we're talking about your skill sets and your passions and where they intersect. And at that intersection is where you find your genius. It's your ability to zero in on that thing inside of your heart that is your calling to write your happy birthday song for the world. I believe every single one of you guys have it, and I look forward to watching the fruit of that conversation happen time and time again. Savvy?
I be making these moves.